Hello everyone, Jason back with another video for you guys. So today I would like to talk about briefly the coming mandatory COVID-19 vaccine. So no, there's no laws or executive orders nationwide to make it mandatory, but there's definitely talk of the ways in which it will be mandated. Law is not the only way to mandate something. So here in this headline from Fortune magazine, will you need a COVID-19 vaccine to fly? One airline says yes, and this is from December 4th, so about a week ago. It says here, now that COVID-19 vaccine is finally in sight, governments, employers, schools, and service providers are debating whether or not to mandate compulsory jabs. They've actually been debating whether or not to mandate compulsory jabs for several months now, as I covered in my last video and I've been covering on my blog since these proposals have first been proposed. One airline carrier is taking a stand on the matter, it says. On Thursday, Alan Joyce, the CEO of Australia's Qantas Airways, said that Qantas will require passengers to prove that they've been vaccinated for COVID-19 in order to board international flights. This is exactly what Bill Gates was talking about all the way back in April, saying that people are going to need to have a vaccine certificate or immunity passport in order to travel. So the CEO goes on to say, Australia's success at virtually eliminating COVID means we'll need a vaccine for international travel to restart properly. He said in a call with investors on Thursday. We have a duty of care to our people and to our passengers, and once a safe and effective vaccine becomes readily available, it will be a requirement. So we'll get to this whole allegedly safe and effective deal in a bit. It's not quite as safe as they want you to believe. However, what I'm going to focus on here for the time being is that airline is already announcing before the vaccine has even been approved that it will be required in order to fly on this airline. A Singapore Airlines spokesperson told Fortune it was going to be work closely with all relevant government authorities and be guided by the advice of health professionals. The announcements about the vaccines being almost to approval stage, quote, provide hope that rolling out the vaccines will spur a recovery in air travel. Air Asia, a Malaysia low-cost airliner, told CNN in November that it would only review making vaccines mandatory once immunizations become widely available. Air New Zealand also told CNN that ultimately it's up to governments to determine when and how it is safe to reopen borders, and we continue to work closely with authorities. So the airlines, if authorities want them to mandate it, they will. Some airlines are going to do it regardless of whether this is recommended by the authorities or not. Asia Airlines, Cathay Pacific, and Taiwan's EVA Airways, as well as U.S. carriers Delta, United Airlines, and American Airlines did not immediately return Fortune's request for comment. But you can bet that just as they jumped to mandate masks on airlines all around the world, and here in America particularly, that they will most certainly do so once again for vaccines as long as the health authorities recommend it. That's how this whole so-called pandemic has gone. Everything that the World Health Organization, the CDC, the Dr. Fauci's, Bill Gates, all the so-called experts and authorities, whatever they recommend, the companies jump to implement. So how are they going to do this? I mean, you're going to have to give them this proof. So as I covered in my last video on the scamdemic, here's the post I wrote about it, but vaccine record cards are already here. They've already been printed. They're ready to go, and they're going to be issued to all coronavirus vaccine recipients. So there you can see COVID-19 vaccination record card. So you want to get on a flight, you might just have to hand them a card with proof of vaccination. And it might be more than just a physical card, as we're going to find out shortly. Here we've got the next article I'm going to look at quick. COVID passport will be essential when international travel reopens, Cebu Pacific boss says. This is from December 7th, so a little more recent than the last article. And this is a Philippines airline. I believe it's an airline, a Philippines company. COVID-19 passports, it says, quote, passports to show people's inoculation and infection history will be, quote, essential when the Philippines opens up international travel, the head of the country's largest budget carrier said Monday. A single global COVID passport will assure territories that travelers will not bring in the respiratory disease, said Lance Gokongwai, president and CEO of Cebu Pacific and JG Summit Holdings, Inc. So again, this is exactly what Bill Gates has been saying, that needing to have a global COVID passport is going to be essential to stop the spread of the so-called virus. We do think that's essential, he said, especially as we open up international travel. There are many different vaccines, and I think we have to work on a single global COVID passport so that each country respects the passport, he told reporters. So, and here he says this has to be the #1 priority, to get vaccines in the hands in as much of the global population as possible, and then connecting this to a COVID passport. So this is where things are headed with the vaccine rollout. Definitely pushing the vaccine cards, vaccine COVID passports, vaccine certificate. The idea that we're going to need to start showing our papers, proof of vaccination in order to travel. This is not new. Sorry about that delay. But I believe this is all the way back from November. They've been talking about a digital health pass to battle coronavirus. Could be a model for airlines. So this is not new. This idea has been in the works for, I think actually since October, there's been articles speaking about digital passports to be used for proof of vaccination. So this one's from Axios, mid-November, says, Ticketmaster's plan to ensure fan safety using a smartphone app could point to the future of air travel, according to Simply Flying, an aviation consulting company. So what's happening is 3 global alliances representing 58 airlines are pushing governments to allow widespread CV-19 testing of passengers instead of existing quarantine restrictions that they argue are ineffective and have killed travel demand. That's true, they are ineffective, the lockdowns are ineffective, and they're causing far more death by poverty than the so-called virus is supposedly causing, according to the way overinflated official numbers. So they are correct about that, but 58 airlines pushing for a digital passport, little concerning. One World, Star Alliance, and SkyTeam cited recent tests of the Common Pass digital health passport system, nonprofit initiative backed by the World Economic Forum. That's the people behind the Great Reset that, according to CNN, is a conspiracy theory, but they just met not too long ago on the Great Reset. And Swiss-based foundation, the Commons Project. So this is being pushed by the very people behind the entire COVID-19 84 agenda. World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. This is being used to usher in New World Order. It's been pretty obvious from the get-go. And they're not hiding it. The World Economic Forum is behind the Great Reset that's ongoing, using all of the lockdowns, all of the transfer of wealth to the elite that are on their side. They are backing this digital health passport system, which, as we've seen, certain airlines are already going to be requiring some sort of proof of vaccination. What could be better than a digital health passport system, right? United Airlines is among the carriers that piloted the technology, so you can bet that United Airlines is going to be Probably among those requiring proof of vaccination in order to fly if they are helping develop this digital passport system. So the Ticketmaster's plan to require a digital health pass for concert goers might be a model for airlines, it says. How it works. After purchasing a ticket, fans would need to verify that they've been vaccinated or tested negative for coronavirus 24 to 72 hours before the event. And it goes on and explains how the current Ticketmaster's passport works. The fan would instruct the lab to share their status with a third-party health information company like the Clear Health Pass or IBM's Digital Health Pass. So there's already multiple digital health passes, immunization passes, however you call them. There are already multiple ones to choose from. So the big tech is they're there waiting with the very stuff that the Bill Gates and the Dr. Fauci's and the World Health Organizations and the World Economic Forum are calling for. They've already got it here, ready to go, ready to roll out, ready to go as soon as the vaccine hits the market. The Health Pass company would verify the attendees' COVID-19 status to Ticketmaster, which would then issue the fans the credentials needed to access the event. So once they verify that the information on the digital immunization pass, they verify that with the big tech companies that you have indeed been vaccinated, then they would give you their own credentials and you would hand those credentials over to the ticket checkers. You'd be able to go into the event, concert, football game, whatever it might be. Ticketmaster would not have access to fans' medical records, so they claim, and would only receive encrypted verification of whether a fan is cleared to attend an event on a given date. However, the companies holding the health pass doesn't mention them. They might well have access to that private information. So this has been in the works. This idea has been in the works for a while. The idea that we're going to need an immunization passport in order to travel. But it gets even more interesting. Not only is it being pushed that we're going to need a immunization card, immunization passport, certificate, whatever it's going to be called, that we're going to have to produce when traveling. We may or may not actually have to get vaccinated just to get the next stimulus check. What do you know? What a great way to make a vaccine mandatory without actually mandating it by law. Would you be willing to get a COVID vaccine in exchange for a $1,500 stimulus check? Doesn't sound like bribery at all. How one bold proposal would work. So this is extremely interesting here from CNBC. Americans are eager for more one-time stimulus checks while the U.S. government is working to get a CV-19 vaccination to the American public. Now, one proposal from former Congressman John Delaney aims to help both sides by providing stimulus checks in exchange for getting vaccinated. Way to go, John Delaney. This is definitely, wow, if this goes through, this is just incredible. I mean, I had so many words to describe this bribery, bullying. But the goal is to reach a 75% vaccination rate faster, which could, they claim, save lives and the U.S. economy at the same time. As if the reason the economy is struggling has something to do with so-called virus, when in reality it has absolutely everything to do with the government agencies, especially the governors of the states, the little dictators who have issued unconstitutional orders shutting down businesses, stay-at-home orders. All the rest has been caused by government mandate, not by a virus. Just media continues to paint the picture as if the virus shut down the economy. No such thing ever happened. So, that out of the way, let's go on here. It says millions of Americans are still hoping for a second round of stimulus checks to help them cope with the financial fallout of the pandemic. No, They're not looking for stimulus checks to cope with the fallout of the pandemic. They're looking for stimulus checks to help cope with the fallout of the ridiculous, unconstitutional government shutdowns and orders and closures of businesses. That's what they need relief from, not from any pandemic. Meanwhile, the U.S. government is preparing to distribute vaccinations to the public in order to end the public health crisis, which really the real crisis ended at the end of April, so really don't know what they're talking about here. Now, one proposal aims to help both efforts by giving people $1,500 stimulus checks in exchange for getting immunized. Great deal for those who are struggling to convince Americans to voluntarily get a vaccination. I mean, brilliant plan. I mean, what do? You shut down our businesses, put us out of work, and then hold a $1,500 check over our head and say, unless you take the jab in your arm, the concoction of brand new experimental mRNA vaccine technology that's never been used on humans before, just roll up your sleeve and get that injected in your arm, and you'll get the $1,500. And we know you're struggling to make ends meet, so it's not like this is just some extra $1,500. It's not like they're just offering you a bonus for taking the vaccine. No, this is like holding over money that literally so many Americans need in order to not lose their homes, in order to feed their family. And now they're going to hold this, at least if John Delaney gets his way, this former Democrat, Congressman from Maryland, if he gets his way, they're going to be able to use $1,500 bribery checks to basically, without passing a law mandating the vaccines, this is going to basically mandate the vaccines for anyone who needs the money. So, great idea for those pushing the agenda, not really a great idea for those who actually care about helping impoverished Americans who are impoverished in directly caused by the government's own handling of the pandemic, the government's own doing. The government caused this mess, and now they are delaying giving more money to the people they themselves have helped bankrupt, put out of business. And on top of that, now they want to use this stimulus as a way to force, or because technically it's not forcing the people to get the vaccine, but it's as close as you can go, as close as you can get to forcing it. I mean, when you have people that are in desperate need of money, and then you require them to get the vaccine in order to get the free money. It's not really free money then. Not free money anyway, but you get the point. Definitely a little concerning if this actually goes through Congress. He says the faster we get 75% of the country vaccinated, the faster we end COVID, and sooner everything returns to normal, he told CNBC, which is absolute BS. Everything returns to normal that the second the governors lift the restrictions. That's when things return to normal. As soon as people stop watching the case numbers on TV, and just go about living lives as normal, that's when everything goes back to normal. In states like Florida, where everyone has returned to normal, everything is normal. There is no crazy pandemic numbers in Florida. Everything is normal in Florida, but in states like California, where everything is locked down, for some reason, numbers are also spiking. Pandemic numbers are spiking, and everything's crazy, and people are in fear. The only thing we need to do to return to normal is for people to be allowed to return to normal, and for the people to stop feeding off of the fear-mongering from the mainstream media. Shut the TV off and go back to normal, and everything will return to normal. But obviously that doesn't suit the agenda of needing to vaccinate the public. So, of course, they're going to say that the vaccine is what's going to help things get back to normal. And what better way to motivate a public that is about 50% says they plan not to get the vaccine? What better way to motivate them to change their minds than to hold a $1,500 check over their head and say, here, like a little cheese, holding a cheese for a mouse, here you go, but you gotta jump through this hoop to get it. And the hoop is, that's right, getting the experimental vaccine. So, there's that. And then as far as the safety, they're all pushing this vaccine as safe and effective, safe and effective. Well, the FDA, which did confirm, according to their own data anyway, that the Pfizer vaccine, the first one it's set to be the first one to be approved, they confirm that it's 95% effective, but at the same time they warn of severe adverse reactions after dose 2. And as we hopefully all know by now, we will all be required, those of us who opt to take this vaccine, gonna have to get 2 doses. They say you need 2 doses for it to be effective. So possibly more doses. They're gonna be doing testing on the people that get this vaccine. The testing hasn't ended. The testing is going to continue for at least 2 years, and it's going to be on the entire American public. Everyone who opts to take this or is forced to take this to keep their job, or maybe is mandated by their state's law, or whoever mandates it, a lot of people are going to be forced to take this vaccine. Whoever takes this vaccine is going to be a part, whether they know it or not, they're going to be part of what they call a pharmacovigilance surveillance program, and it's a program to test the long-term safety effects of the vaccine. So it's possible that maybe it'll end up having to be 3 doses, or maybe you'll have to have, like a booster dose every 3 months or every year, kind of like the flu. Who knows? But what we do know is everyone who does take this is going to be given at least 2 doses. So here it's talking about, in the risk section of the FDA assessment of the vaccine, it says the vaccine has been shown to elicit increased local and systematic adverse reactions as compared to those in the placebo arm, usually lasting a few days. The most common solicited adverse reactions were injection site reactions, so like pain, swelling at the site of the injection, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, chills, joint pain, fever. So some, pretty bad, and some not so much. A little pain, not so much. But, you get headache and chills and fever, and that's almost like what they describe this horrible, awful COVID of being. So those are the more mild reactions. However, it says from the FDA, severe adverse reactions occurred in between 0 and 4.6% of participants. So 5% or less of participants had severe adverse reactions. They were more frequent after dose 2 than after dose 1, and were generally less frequent in older adults greater than 55 years of age as compared to younger participants, which was the ones around 4.6%. Among reported unsolicited adverse events, lymphadenopathy, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry about that weird word, but that thing right there occurred much more frequently in the vaccine group than the placebo group, and is plausibly related to vaccination. The experimental vaccine, written here, Zero Hedge writes, BNT162B2 is on track to be the first shot to get an emergency authorization. So, even if they're right that it is effective at stopping a virus that hasn't been proven to be a virus, or hasn't been proven to be a new virus, hasn't been isolated. But even if it's effective at stopping this thing, they don't really know what it is, it doesn't mean it's inherently safe. So when they say safe and effective, just keep this in mind. One more thing though, not only might it cause those more mild or more severe side effects, vaccines potentially cause death. The FDA has also said that 2 participants in the Pfizer COVID vaccine trial have died, according to this Zero Hedge headline. With the FDA expected to grant emergency use approval for the Pfizer BioNTech COVID vaccine Thursday after releasing a preliminary assessment, blah, 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 the agency admitted Tuesday that 2 participants in the phase 3 trials have died. One of them was immunocompromised, according to the Jerusalem Post. The FDA is expected to release 2 separate assessments of the trial data before a panel of experts meets to review the data, and then at which point they either approve the request or they deny it. This also comes after the FDA warned of a severe adverse reaction, which we just went over. In the US, there has been at least one other trial participant who reportedly died not long after receiving the second dose of a vaccine. The participant in that case was a priest in Philadelphia who participated in the Moderna trial. So that, by my calculations, means there's been three deaths, potentially, or one could argue likely, caused by these experimental vaccines. In the UK, 2 patients were seriously sickened during the trial of the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, which is probably going to be the biggest global supplier, the biggest supplier of the vaccine globally. And then in Brazil, authorities briefly halted a trial of, he says here, Sinovac's experimental COVID vaccine, but is, unless, let's just check this out, unless this is a different story, I do know that there was a Brazilian in AstraZeneca trials that died, which brings the numbers up to 4 people that have died in the vaccine trials. If this is yet a different one, that would make it 5, so let's find out here quick. It says Sinovac's Coronavac, Testing of Sinovac Biotech Limited's vaccine called Coronavac has been halted in Brazil after an event that occurred on October 29th. So this... yeah, such pauses are not uncommon in large-scale drug trials, and 2 Western developers, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, both paused their trials. AstraZeneca paused it after a Brazilian test subject died. They claim it wasn't by the vaccine. In the AstraZeneca case, they said it wasn't in the vaccine group, it was in the placebo group. But for AstraZeneca, they actually use another vaccine that's been tested safe and effective as the placebo, which is wrong. You shouldn't be able to use another vaccine in the placebo group, but the AstraZeneca has done that. That's on the public record on their own website. I've covered this in the past. And so even if this AstraZeneca death in Brazil wasn't caused by the experimental COVID vaccine, it was in all likelihood caused by the other vaccine, which has caused has caused deaths before, so it's not unsurprising that could happen. So this is possibly a 5th person in trials, in these vaccine trials, that have died. Yeah, Coronavac. So yeah, apparently that's 5 deaths, at least 5 deaths. I had not heard about this one until just now. Or I had heard about it. I reread that article, but this is the first time it really hit me that this was different from the AstraZeneca. I had just read that it was Brazil trial, and I just... yeah. So anyway, it looks like 5 people in the vaccine trials at least have died. So that's a little bit concerning. 4 of those, quite... if we are to believe AstraZeneca that it wasn't in the trial arm, we can have 4 that it looks like may have been caused by the vaccine. No idea. Maybe none of them. Maybe they were all in the placebo arm. Really no way to know. They don't release that information. They don't want people knowing if a vaccine is responsible for death, which some vaccines that are on the market have caused death, so it's not unreasonable to think that this may happen in a small minority of people. It's always a possibility. Vaccines are never safe. It's always a matter of who is affected and how many are affected. But every single vaccine on the market has caused some amount of harm, no matter how minor or how major, no matter how widespread or how isolated. Every vaccine does cause some amount of harm. There is no 100% safe vaccine on the market. That just doesn't exist. That can be looked up at lawsuits, vaccine injury payouts by the big pharma corporations. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys here. So, we've got vaccine certificates here. The vaccine's being rolled out, and they're doing everything in their power, including potentially withholding stimulus money from anyone who refuses to take the vaccine. So what's it going to be next? We'll have to wait and find out. Until next time, stay safe out there. Stay free, stay sane. And, if you're going to take the vaccine, I just hope you do your research first. Don't take it just because the media says take it. Certainly don't take it because the big pharma companies selling it say it's safe. Take it because you feel that it's the best thing for your own health. Unlike what, big tech and establishment media and all of these experts like Bill Gates say, you are in charge of your own health. It's not up to them to decide whether or not you need this to be safe and healthy. That's up for you to decide. So anyway, mandatory vaccination is being rolled out, just as I've been saying. It's going to be rolled out with the private big corporations and big tech doing everything in their power to require it for basic services, and if you don't comply, you don't get those basic services. So travel is one thing, maybe restaurants, sports teams, we don't know how far this will go, but we do know that the people like Bill Gates and those pushing this agenda want everyone to get the vaccine, so we know they would like everybody to be requiring it. They want employers to require it. They want every big they probably want Walmart to have a place where you're going to put your hand with your digital passport. You have to scan your digital passport in order to go into Walmart. I'm sure that's what they would like. Whether or not they get their plan, whether or not their agenda gets rolled out exactly as they wish or as quickly as they wish, we'll just have to wait and see. But that's what they want. It's what they've been pushing from day one of this pandemic, and now it's here. Just as they, prophesied it would be, and sure enough, it's turning out that, just like Bill Gates said, they're going to have a COVID passport to travel, at least on some airlines. So, not unlikely that the rest of the stuff they've been warning about, whether, going to need it for employee, going to need it for employment, going to need it to receive a check, going to need it for this, for that, for everything eventually. That's where this is headed. So just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. Hope you all have a great weekend. Like I said, stay safe and sane and free as possible out there. Make up your own mind on important stuff like this. And if you appreciate my work, links to my blog where all of my stuff, I don't get to everything in videos, links to my blog, and also where you can give a Bitcoin donation will all be in the links below, along with all the links I covered here today. So have a good one, guys. Till next time, this has been Jason. Peace.